Hi, Pete.
Hi, hi, Wynn. Hi, Vicki. Really great to see you guys again.
We are
Ditto.
so excited that have you back because you always make us think and you make us laugh and you make us um, wrap things up in a nice wrapper of family and learning and encouragement. It's just so much fun.
Well, aren't you a smooth talker?
I'm just starting out. Just getting warmed up. So you have
Yeah.
this great story about the time you were reading the newspaper to an audience.
Oh, yeah. So I worked with I know people say this, but I worked with the absolute best people in my career. I just had so many friends and people I respect, and to a testimony to that is that we still get together in retirement once a month for lunch. In fact, tomorrow's our day,
Mhm.
and
Yay!
you sit around and you talk about all the things that are going on in your life. Well, actually, the beginning is usually recapping somebody's latest surgery or new body part,
Right.
Yeah.
um, and you're talking about grandchildren, and now I get to be part of that conversation. But eventually, it almost always turns into where somebody has a share something about some child that we used to teach. But anyway, when my friend Joan retired from teaching, she was still pretty young, and she's always been a very giving person. And so she decided that she wanted to start a program for the blind,
Mm.
people with low vision. And so she wrote a grant, and I don't know all the particulars. But anyway, what basically happened is she got all this radio equipment, and we read, I didn't really do that much of it until I retired, but sometimes in the summer,
Yeah.
she with a bunch of volunteers would read the newspaper. Um, our newspaper, for it was actually an hour and a half. It was live radio.
Wow.
And there were always two readers, because maybe somebody has to go to the bathroom, maybe you suddenly you start coughing. But
Right.
we would mark the newspaper up in advance. So you would take turns. Okay, this
Yeah.
is going to be your article. This is going to be my article. And so lots of times, we would, I know in the beginning, I got the newspaper at home. I would actually read the newspaper in advance,
Right.
because I knew, you don't want to be
Yeah.
sitting there reading live and then trying to say a word. And so I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
like look for challenging words, let's say there was a local politician and I wasn't
Hmm.
sure how to pronounce her name. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure other people just went with it, but
Yeah.
I'm anal that way. So I spent a
Yeah.
lot of time, ahead of time. Anyway, I'd go into the studio and we'd have our session, read the news, and after the first hour, then the last half hour, we would read another newspaper. Oftentimes, they're just newspapers that in the area, but would only come out once a week or something.
Yeah.
Well, there was this little community nearby called Blue Lake. Blue Lake, it's only got a few hundred people, and I'm even surprised they have a newspaper.
Right.
But anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
reading. As I did this a little more often, I got more comfortable, and I wouldn't look at the paper ahead of time. It just, so what if you make
Yeah.
a mistake? And oh, I should also say, well, as on live radio, so that we were on a very high frequency. I don't even know uh, the particulars of how it worked, but people could tune in to our broadcast, and this is their way of getting the news. So it was a
Mhm.
really a wonderful idea.
Right.
Anyway, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading along, one day reading the Blue Lake News, and there's the crime report section. And I'm sitting next to my good friend Brenda, who was one of the main volunteers. And I begin to read this article, and it's so ridiculous. I can't hardly keep a straight face. And it's the kind of thing where when you're with a friend and your friend starts giggling, and then you get a case of the giggles, and I'm like, this is simple. It's not like we have this massive audience, but I know I'm on live radio and I'm trying to keep it together. Well, I'll
Right.
share a little bit of the story because that's what makes this. So I'm reading along, and it talks about this woman who called the police because someone passing by her house got on her riding lawnmower and started mowing the grass. And
How
I'm
dare
like
they? Yeah.
trying to picture the scene here. And it goes on and on. It's this kind of elaborate story, and how the woman asked the man to get off the mower, but he wouldn't get off her mower, and he continued to mow. And so she ends up eventually calling the police. And you just imagine that call into dispatch
Right.
and what that
Right,
would have
Right.
sounded
right.
like.
Yeah.
Well,
He's on my mower.
I'm reading along, and it's the
Right.
whole thing is just comical. But I'm reading along, and and she gets a case of the giggles, and she's not laughing out loud, but she's sitting right next to me, and I can feel her shoulders start.
Yeah.
And finally, it just as I in the middle of reading the article, I finally lost it. And I mean, I've been in situations like that before, but I've always been able to restrain myself. I start laughing out loud. She starts laughing out loud. And what do you do? And you try to get it together, and you apologize to your audience or whatever, but it's just one of those situations where, oh my God.
Well, and you
Well,
think about the person doing dispatch going, okay, what do I do with this? Like, theft of a
Right.
lawnmower, unauthorized mowing. And I'm thinking, really, trespassing is probably the best they could get, right? But
Exactly. Exactly. And here, I mean, just where does somebody even get the idea? I think I'll hop on this person's mower and start mowing their
yeah,
lawn.
yeah.
yeah,
I hope he was
yeah.
doing straight lines. I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, oh, we could be doing crop circles. Oh, 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 yeah. My first thought when I read the piece, Pete, and I busted out laughing because it's just so. I was laughing before you even described it, for our listeners. But the thing I couldn't get past was it was kind of like a joyride, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
This program was just so amazing. I think she did this for like 10 years, Monday through Friday, and lined up lots of people in the community because obviously we have busy lives. You can't be doing it yourself every day.
yeah,
Right.
And
yeah,
so and then and it grew because more and more people heard about it and learned about it, and so it was really a great way to interact. And one of the really really cool things she did, she Joan, the one that started the program, she's into theater, she's into music, and
mm,
so she um during our local theater productions, she had a benefit for the blind.
mhm,
And so during the show, I think she maybe during the maybe month or so that the show ran, she would one night she would have an event just for people with limited vision.
mhm,
And so it's like, well, how does that work? You're thinking, they're
mhm.
going to the theater. Yeah, you can hear the
Yeah,
actors, and I'm sure you can make distinctions in their voices and everything. And and I would think you would be able to enjoy it. But the way the event started, I thought this was really cool. She would get out there ahead of time, and she would describe the setting to the audience. And so the audience was made up
Mhm.
of people that were blind and people that weren't. But it
Yeah.
was just very cool because you
Mm-hmm.
could kind of, she just was very elaborate in her description, such that, over here we have a kitchen, and she would describe it in
Yeah.
great detail. And so, while I'm watching the play, I'm also looking around because I'm curious how this is being received.
Right, right,
And, and I'd look to these faces of people that aren't able to watch it, and yet you can still see the joy on their faces. And so I don't know, things like that, when people um give of themselves like that,
mm-hmm.
I just think that those, yeah, they're not doing it to for any other reason than to be a good person and bring
Right,
some joy into the world. And I think
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that I find most inspiring,
mm-hmm.
because then it just like, wow, if they can do that, why can't I?
Right,
Yeah.
And so
right,
I think my whole approach in retirement has been, this is my time to give back. I have the time now, and if I do it, then maybe I'll inspire somebody else, just the
right.
way the others have done the same. And if we all adopted that kind of attitude of looking out for each
Yeah.
other, I just think, the world would be a better
A
place.
better place. Well, and I love that, as you're doing it, you show us how it can be, the title of your piece about this is sometimes you just have to laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun. It's not, I'm doing my weekly penance. It's, I'm in here, I'm with my friend who's reading along, Brenda, and we're
Yeah.
laughing and
Yeah.
and spreading the laughter as well.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, and life is just filled with so many funny moments. And
Yeah.
sometimes you might be in the middle of it, and you're feeling agitated and angry. But if you look at a situation from a different perspective, lots of times you can find the humor in it. I mean,
Right.
even
Yeah.
just I was talking about this traveling
Mhm.
experience. We just went to this family reunion in Minnesota, and it was aggravating. But at some point, you just have to realize how comical this whole thing is too.
Yeah.
And so we were. I'll tell you a little bit about that. So here we are. It was 2 days after the IT event, and flights. We were flying Delta Airlines, and flights were delayed, and there were all kinds of people in the airport on standby. And so, we were like, gosh, are we going to be able to make it to our reunion? And we had a series of three flights. And so we got up at like 4 a.m. in the morning to catch our first 6 a.m. flight or something. And so the first flight goes from Oregon to Salt Lake City. Everything's going smooth. Oh boy, we're in great shape. We get on the plane in Salt Lake City, and we think we're in good shape. We're right on time, and we're thinking, man, this is going better than we anticipated. Well, we're on the plane, and the pilot comes on and says, we have a slight delay, ladies and gentlemen. Should be just a few minutes. And then he elaborates and says, so, well, we've got a couple bags that are on the plane that we need to get off.
Oh,
And
Okay.
so, I guess I'm envisioning 10 minutes or something tops.
Yeah.
45 minutes later, we're still sitting there. And my wife uh, is starting to feel the heat.
yeah.
We got to get going. We're going to be late. Well,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. And
No.
so I'm feeling a little nervous too, but I'm trying to play it like, yeah, we got this whole thing under control. And I think
Yeah.
we do have it under control. And so, don't worry about it, honey. We're gonna be fine, and we would have been fine if something else didn't happen. So we land. We finally take off. We land in Minneapolis, and we had another scheduled flight in well, our next flight was supposed to be an hour and a half, hour and a half in between.
Mhm.
And so we're, ding, the bell rings, everybody stands up to get off the plane, and they couldn't get the door of the plane open. And
Oh
Oh,
so,
no.
again, it's one of these things you think,
oh
well,
no.
they do this every day. This can only take a minute or two. Well, after a half an hour goes by, then you start to like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, how long are we going to be here? This is going to be one of these
yeah.
stories where you're here, for half a
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
How are they going to feed us? How are we going to go to the bathroom? All those things are
Yeah.
entering your mind. But anyway, we finally get off, and we look at we check the app on our phones, and because we know what gate we're supposed to be at, but we don't know what gate we're coming into. And
Right.
so we get off the plane, and we're at like gate A 48, and we need to be at gate F 72 or something. Well, that means
Of course.
you got to go through all these sections. The Minneapolis airport is big.
Yeah.
And so we start, even though we're like, this is like, we have no chance, but got to give it the old college try here. So
Yeah,
we
you
take
do.
off, and we're not exactly youngsters here, but we're making good time. We're making jokes about entering the senior Olympics, and
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of these carts comes by, where people that need a
Yeah.
ride because
Yeah.
it's too far for them to walk.
Yeah.
And I go into my, flagging down routine. Oh,
Over here.
the guy stops, and I'm like, we're late. We got 5 minutes till our flight's supposed to take off. Can you take us here? And he wants to look at our phone to probably make sure that I'm not some lunatic or something. And and he sees what gate we're going to, so he says, yeah, I'll try to get you there. So we take off, and it was just so hilarious. By this point we're laughing because these carts that I've seen in the past, they usually have a horn on them or something.
Yeah.
His Either he wasn't using it or he didn't have one. And so
Oh.
all he's doing is like, we're like in a video game, and we're whipping
Oh
in and out. Yeah, and there's a lot of people there, of course, partly I think because of the IT event. And so we're like, again, we're thinking we're never going to make this. But at that point we were like literally
Yeah.
laughing, and then people would walk right in front of you aimlessly. They're not doing anything wrong. They're oblivious that this cart is racing along. They have no idea they're about that, how close they came to getting knocked down, flattened, right, like right
Yeah.
out of cartoons or something.
Or I was
And
gonna
so we
say mowed down, right?
Yes,
Mowed down. Yeah.
mow down is
Continuing
a
that
better word.
theme. Yeah.
We so
Uh-huh.
we show
That's a
up,
good one,
we
Vicky.
we show up, we get to the gate, and of course we're 5 minutes late, and the planes that we can see the plane, but they're not gonna open the door for us. And so,
No.
I mean, that stuff happens, right? It
Yeah.
happens to everybody when you
Oh,
travel, but because we're going to another little regional airport, maybe a 50-minute flight, but 3.5 hour drive or something.
right.
And so we look and go up to the agent. The next flight happens in 8 hours, right? And so we're like,
Oh.
oh my gosh, are we really going to hang out in the airport for 8 hours? And so we start, trying to decide what we're going to do. And let's go rent a car. So we go to the car rental place, and this is, again, everything is huge. I've never been in this airport before. you're asking people for directions wherever you go, and I'll
And
give you
it's the
9.
global outage. There are people
Yeah.
everywhere, right? So it's just
Right.
also confusion on top of confusion, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they give you like 9 directions. Well, I got lost on direction number 2, right? But okay, I'll just walk a few feet and ask somebody else. So we
Yeah.
finally get to the car rental place, and we're filling out all the paperwork. We're doing we think we're okay. We got a car, and then the agent says, "Well, you have to return the car back to this airport." Well, that kind of defeats the purpose. We're gonna drive 3.5 hours. You mean I have to drive it back, and we're flying out of the other city? So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this isn't gonna work. So then we end up looking at a bus as an option, and then we finally found some guy in a van, and suddenly we're in there with about 14 people, and all going on a 3.5 hour ride to Minneapolis. And so we ended up getting in about 11:30 that night, and no luggage. Our luggage didn't make it either, so it
Yeah.
was
I
just
was
like
wondering about that,
one thing
right? Your
after
luggage
another.
was who knows where.
But in the end, it made for a good story, and when we weren't um, upset, we were laughing. So
That's great. And I love it because you've brought us full circle. Like as always, you've encouraged us to make this world a better place. You've encouraged us to laugh about
Yeah.
mishaps as they happen along the way, and just such a good Pete story.
Yeah. Well, and in the end, I think maybe one of the morals, and this is a good one for me, sometimes you've got to trust the guy in the van. Right? Like, but your like hesitation, like reserve, you'd probably worn that down so much that whatever you might have thought at the beginning of your journey about getting in an obscure van with strangers, at that
yeah,
moment you were like, yeah, that's the best
yeah.
idea ever.
No, I mean that's right. I mean, so many days in life are kind of routine, right? One thing that happens that always
Right.
happens, and then you have these days like this where, wow, I never thought I'd be doing this. So
Right. Right.
Oh my gosh,
Oh,
so
Pete,
funny.
thank you so much for coming on. We love your stories. We love talking to you. Can't wait to
yeah,
hear what you're up to next.
well, you guys keep spreading the joy, because I've watched enough of these podcasts that you've done. I don't always get to see all of them, but you both have a very you have a talent for making uh, creating ease for people to be here. In fact, today, we had planned this, and I actually forgot what we were even going to talk about because it was a while. And I thought, what does it matter? This is just like talking to a couple old friends, and
Yeah.
there's no stress, and that really is a talent. Some people have that ability to put people at ease, and both of you have that.
Oh,
But it
wow.
does feel like we're old friends, but I love you bringing back that Pete encouragement factor again. So thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks so much. Good to
Thank
talk to you
you.
guys.
You too.